1 year after I walked away, I returned to my billionaire husband's divorce meeting carrying the little daughter he never knew was his. Then his father confessed the one lie that destroyed our family. The day I walked into my billionaire husband's private divorce meeting with our sleeping daughter cradled against my chest, I watched the most powerful man in the room lose the one thing no fortune could ever buy back. He believed our marriage would end with a single signature. He believed I would quietly accept the divorce papers, take the modest settlement his lawyers had prepared, and disappear from his life as though I had never truly mattered. But the moment his eyes landed on the tiny baby sleeping peacefully in my arms, everything changed. The elevator climbed silently through the center of Pierce Tower in downtown Seattle. The ride was smooth, almost unnaturally calm, as though I were on my way to another ordinary business meeting instead of the final chapter of the life I had once dreamed we'd share. Back then, my legal name was Hannah Waverly. At least it still was on paper. I was 29 years old, dressed in a cream blouse beneath a navy coat that had seen better days. My dark hair was pinned neatly behind my head, my shoes were practical, and my hands remained perfectly steady. To anyone who happened to pass me in the hallway, I looked like an ordinary woman arriving for a scheduled appointment. No one could have guessed what the past year had looked like. No one knew I had spent every day raising a child on my own, and no one knew the little girl sleeping against my chest was the daughter my husband had never even met. I adjusted the baby carrier carefully and looked down at Grace. One tiny hand rested against my blouse, her warm cheek pressed gently into my shoulder. She was only 4 months old, yet somehow she had already become the reason I found the strength to keep putting one foot in front of the other. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. I wasn't sure whether I was comforting my daughter or trying to convince myself. The elevator doors slid open. The executive floor stretched before me in polished wood, floor-to-ceiling glass, and the quiet confidence that only enormous wealth seems able to create. Assistants moved efficiently behind immaculate reception desks. Phones rang softly. Conversations stayed measured. Everything about the floor had been designed to keep problems far away from the people who could afford not to face them. But that morning, the problem had arrived, and she was carrying a baby. The receptionist looked up, then immediately rose from her chair. "Mrs. Waverly," she said, visibly startled. "Mr. Waverly is still in a private meeting. A year earlier, I would have apologized. I would have smiled politely, taken a seat, folded my hands in my lap, and waited until Preston Waverly decided whether his wife deserved a few minutes of his time. That woman no longer existed. She had disappeared somewhere between unpaid hospital bills, sleepless nights, unanswered messages, and the painful realization that love alone can never save a family when one person chooses silence over responsibility. Without slowing my pace, I continued down the hallway. At the far end stood the large double doors leading into Preston's private conference room. Behind them waited attorneys, financial advisors, and executives whose entire careers revolved around making devastating decisions sound like routine business. I rested one hand on the polished brass handle, took one slow breath, then quietly pushed the doors open. Every conversation inside the room stopped. Every head turned toward the doorway, and every eye settled on the sleeping baby in my arms.